Hey guys, it's Katie, and I'm here today to do a review of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series by Rick Riordan. For those who aren't familiar with this series, this follows the tale of a young boy named Percy Jackson who basically finds out that he is a demigod. And what that means in terms of this world is that he has an earthly parent as well as a godly parent. And because this series is primarily focused on Greek mythology, his father is a Greek god. So, what ensues after that is just crazy, chaotic adventures, basically. It's kind of expanding on that a little more. Percy is a young kid who gets kicked out of basically every single school he ever went to because of either acting out or dyslexia and learning issues and just all of these things. And he just can't seem to stay at a school no matter what. And then one day, he is just kind of pursued by all of these monsters while he's on a school field trip, basically. And entails is him having to kind of flee, and his mom is aware of this whole situation. And because he's kind of getting older and getting more towards the age of where the older he gets, the more monsters flock him because of who he is, he ultimately goes to what's a place that's called Camp Half-Blood. And Camp Half-Blood is protected by all of these creatures and charms and magic and things. And only people who are half-bloods or gods or mythical creatures and whatever are allowed to go there. If you are not one of those people, you are allowed to cross through the border if you are invited inside. And basically Percy has to, he goes to this camp, and then he doesn't know anything. Like, he doesn't know why he's there or what his whole deal is until it's explained to him that he is a demigod and that his father is a god. And unless you are claimed by the parent, you don't know who your godly parent might be. And it's kind of similar to some other like middle grade things that, like, kind of depending on certain characteristics or like who your parents are or whatever will depend where you kind of go. So they have like a catch-all, and Hermes is the kind of catch-all cabin that people who don't know who their godly parent is stays in. So Percy kind of stays there for like a day, and then ultimately his father ends up claiming him. And his father is Poseidon, who is the sea god. And that's a really, really big deal because he is one of the, quote, big three. The big three being Zeus, Hera, and then Poseidon. And the reason that that's such a big deal is because there's this prophecy that basically says that once a child of a godly parent of one of the big three reaches the age of 16, they have the power of whether or not to save or destroy Olympus. Prophecy is kind of a looming thing throughout the entire series, all the way up to the last book when things kind of blow up, basically. But basically, each book chronicles kind of a different adventure. These students get sent on quests for different reasons. The oracle will tell a prophecy and then to that specific student or whatever, and then they'll end up going, or there's some kind of problem and someone needs to go on a quest to do something. So each book follows a specific event, and usually it deals with the same characters. For whatever reason, these specific characters always seem to go on the same, always get picked to go on the quests. So as I might have mentioned before, there are 5 books in the overall series. There's The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, The Titan's Curse, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and The Last Olympian. But there's also a companion book thing that's kind of full of short stories and all of these other little fun things here and there that adds to the world, sort of, and that's called the Demigod Files. But I'm mostly here today to talk about the 5 books. Anyway, the first book follows, as I said, Percy just kind of figuring out his demigod status, him going to camp, and then ultimately he gets sent on a quest. Because, as it turns out, Zeus's lightning bolt was stolen, and that's a big deal. So Percy gets picked along with 2 of his other friends, Annabeth, who is the daughter of Athena, and Grover, who is a satyr, who actually went to school with Percy before he kind of found out about this thing, because satyrs are protectors of a sort, and so he was protecting Percy from all of the monsters that were kind of, following him around all the time. So they get sent on this quest to go find Zeus's lightning bolt. And along the way, they just kind of run into all sorts of crazy adventures. It's this journey of discovery. Percy's just figuring out his powers and just his whole life, because it was all upended and everything. And they meet all kinds of gods and creatures along the way, and it's just super crazy and super chaotic. And the second one follows, once again, Percy goes to camp during the summer, and he finds out that he has a brother. And that brother is a Cyclops, because his father's Poseidon, and basically Cyclops are sons of Poseidon. And it's kind of Percy dealing with that, but also Grover is missing in action. And then also the tree that is guarding camp is dying, has been poisoned. So they're trying to figure out a cure. And so it just basically, they are going on another adventure. Book 3 is very, very similar once again, but instead of during the summer, we are now on an adventure kind of around the winter solstice time period. And some new characters come into the mix that have been alluded to throughout the other 2 books, and we really start to get to know them this time. We get to see some other gods. Percy is, the most endearing, adorable idiot ever. And basically Annabeth is missing in this one. And so it's just a whole mess. But one thing that was really cool about this specific book was that we got introduced to the Hunters of Artemis, and I loved them. It was really cool. It was really interesting. And I just really liked that. Plus we got to see more of the Titans, and just kind of things are starting to boil up. And then the 4th book, which is arguably my favorite because of certain things that happen in the book. There are certain myths that are incorporated that I just have the most fond memories of growing up with. The main one being the tale of Icarus and Daedalus. If you watched my wrap up, you heard me talk a little bit more about it, but I won't go into it here. But I love the tale of Daedalus and Icarus. It's a good time. Daedalus. I always forget what the pronunciation is. Depends on who you talk to. Percy, Annabeth, and Grover, and also on this case, Tyson, who is Percy's brother, goes on another quest through the labyrinth. And they encounter all kinds of crazy things that are going on, and it's just another important quest, and it's kind of the penultimate book of the series where a lot of stuff starts to happen. And then finally, the last book is the Last Olympian. That's basically where everything hits the fan and blows up, and it's just one action sequence after another, and you're just exhausted by the time the book is done, because it's literally never-ending action, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So now kind of just breaking it down and talking about the elements of the books in one fell swoop, because I can do that with this series because of how it's written and things. But let's talk about the writing first. The writing is very, very simplistic, but it is very engaging. It just kind of draws you in and makes you in some ways forget that you're reading. You know what I mean? Okay, cool. The pacing is pretty decent, but one thing I did notice was there are certain things that kind of repeat over and over again as the story goes on. So certain phrases that are just the same in every book, you just have to kind of, I don't know, it's just something that I really noticed, and I'm just like, okay, we're playing the same best hits in this book again, so I'm just noticing that theme. Cool. So I mean, as I said, the writing was fine. It was interesting. It drew me in. The pacing was well done. There you go. The writing is the thing that I focus on the least when I'm reading. It just is what it is. And next, the plot. The plot for each book was definitely interesting. It kept me going. It kept me interested. But I mean, of course, to me, it was a little bit predictable because not only do I know the myths, but I was able to just kind of follow Ariadne's string and just kind of like figure out, unravel that web, man, because, you know, just things were a little bit predictable after a while, especially once you kind of read one or two books, you notice that there's a common theme throughout them, and then you're just kind of like, okay, well, I know where this is going, I know how this is going to end, etc. And so, I mean, while the plot was interesting and, you know, unique to each book, while also tying all of the books together, it was also just a little repetitive after a while, and it was just exhausting. And that's kind of why I'm taking a break, because I'm just like, I know I'm going to screw up I'm going to try and probably screw up series because they're going to be very similar because of the formula that Rick Riordan has created for the books. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a step back for a moment. Talking a little bit about the world building, which I kind of touched on before, I normally don't read urban fantasy. I just tend to not like it that much. Just the blending of magic and old ancient things, medieval things, and putting it in kind of a modern setting. I don't know, for some reason it's just always kind of been iffy for me. It's not one of my buzzwords, basically. That's all you need to know. But I really liked this in an urban setting because I thought that Rick Riordan did a really, really good job of kind of creating this really unique aspect of like having this ancient society and ancient culture and kind of having a bridge in a way. So I mean, like, camp is very much teaching them the old ways with the old ancient weapons and ancient battle techniques and things, and then just kind of having the modern day aspect of it. I don't know, I just thought it was really, really well done. And just how Olympus went from, you know, being in Greece all the way to New York and the United States because of ABC reasons. I don't know, it was just really interesting and just generally really well done. And then finally, as always, the characters. I find the characters to be very endearing. Are they my favorite characters ever? No. But I really enjoyed them and enjoyed the story that Rick Riordan created through them, if that makes sense. So I mean, Percy is, as I said, this endearing idiot of a 12-year-old boy at the beginning, and he's this, you know, I just really enjoyed watching his character growth over the years. I thought that was really, really well done. But I mean, the way Rick Riordan wrote his characters, they're very much, I don't want to say stereotyped, but they, and maybe this is just me being a kind of changed reader, because, you know, over the years you change and you morph into something else, if you will. And it's just kind of noticing that Percy kind of falls into that, like, clueless narrator. So I mean, like, anything that someone mentions, he's just like, what's that? Or who is that? Or I don't know, just he's always like asking really obvious questions that can be explained, I don't know, differently, rather than just making him be like 110% clueless all the time. I don't know, I just thought that was like a little bit, I don't know, a little bit iffy with me. It was either kind of a hit or a miss, depending on the situation. I mean, Annabeth is this walking encyclopedia on like everything possible. And I mean, based on the characterization that Rick Riordan made her out to be, you know, Athena's daughter. Athena is the goddess of wisdom. Annabeth pretty much embodies Athena in so many ways. And so, I mean, just kind of like telling, oh, clueless boy hero, telling him how to like handle his life basically. I was just like, okay, I see what you're doing here and it's working. But at the same time, I also see what you're doing here, you know, because a lot of the ancient heroes were complete morons in a lot of ways. Yeah, this is me, my classics background. I mean, Odysseus was a complete and total idiot. So was Jason. I mean, like, a lot of the ones that kind of get a little bit named throughout the series, and like also the gods kind of like throwing shade about it and stuff, and it's just really amusing. So I mean, like, the fact that they're portraying Percy in the same way, I just thought was really cleverly done, but also like I saw what they were doing, so I mean, it was just kind of like a weird mix depending on the situation. I loved Grover. I loved him as the comedic relief. He was great. It's just a good pure soul. I don't know, just the characters are just really well done, and I really liked most of them, if not all of them. Yeah, and I don't know. I just liked the series overall. Companion book that goes with the series, and it's called The Demigod Files. The Demigod Files, and it's just kind of a collection of like short stories and interviews and pictures and maps and things inside. And I mean, while it was interesting and it added to some of the things that, you know, the world presents, like a map of camp and pictures of all of the gods in their human forms, and like puzzles and things. I like puzzles. So, I mean, it had puzzles in the back. I didn't do them, but yeah, they're in the back, and that made me happy. There was also a letter to camp, a letter to the campers, and a packing list that Annabeth put together, kind of a thing. And they were fine. Like, all of the other things were fine, but the main focus of the main focus of that work were the 3 short stories inside. 2 of them were really, really mediocre, and I honestly didn't think added too much. Like, they were totally skippable, and honestly, I just really found that Rick Riordan's strong point lies more in the novels and novellas area rather than the short stories. The first 2, as I said, really didn't add anything, and I just didn't think that it worked. It just didn't work for me. They were too rushed. There was too much packed into like 30 pages of a short story. Like, it just wasn't working out for me. And the first one followed a tale between Percy and Clarice, who is the daughter of Ares, who's the war god. And basically what happens is she took his chariot out for a spin because her father told her to, because it's kind of like a rite of passage kind of a thing, and she lost it. And she basically ends up running into Percy, and then they end up getting it back together. And it was just, it was okay. It was meh. Like, not my favorite thing in the world. Then the second one, literally just what the hell was the point? It was all of them at camp. I think it was like boys against girls, and they were playing capture the flag, and they had this like weird side quest thing, and ultimately, like, we find out that it was all a ploy that was created by Annabeth in order to capture and wear out Percy and his teammate. And I'm just like, what? I was so annoyed with that short story. Like, it was just not plausible, incredibly far-fetched, and I was just, as I said, ridiculously irritated. The last short story in that collection I really enjoyed. It was almost like reading an extension on one of the novels, and I just really, really liked it. And it was called Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades. And basically what happens is Percy, Thalia, and Nico get called to the underworld to help Persephone get back this sword that she was creating for Hades as like a new weapon that could either raise the dead or kill people. Like, it was kind of a key to the underworld, so it can either lock souls in or unleash them. Stolen by someone. And these three were enlisted particularly because they were of who they are. Like, Percy is the son of Poseidon. Thalia is the daughter of Zeus, as well as hunter of Artemis. And then Nico is the son of Hades. So the three of them together go and basically get the sword back. Anyway, that is my overall general review of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series plus companion book. And I know a lot of people on BookTube have read some Rick Riordan at some point or another, and so feel free to come down in the comments and tell me if you've read them and talk to me about all of the things. And if you haven't read them, if you're planning on reading them, just come talk to me about all of the things down below or on Twitter if you want to talk spoilers and things. And yeah, that's generally all I've got. So you know the drill at this point. As I said, I have both my social media links down below. I have a Twitter and Goodreads. And I will catch you later with another video. Bye!